Good day, and welcome to the SAP Sourcing CLM webcast, Auction Types and Configuration conference call. Today's conference is being recorded. At this time, I would like to turn the conference over to Rosemary Boyclair. Please go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Travis. Welcome, everyone. I'm Rosemary Boyclair, and a member of the Center of Excellence. For today's call, I'm going to focus on the configuration of auction types and the various settings that are available and really what they mean. We've had many auction-related inquiries from our customers in the last several weeks, and so we thought this would be a good topic to cover to kind of start this discussion. We're also planning some future sessions to get into more detail in some specific areas. So with that, just kind of get into what the topics are. So we'll talk about what an auction type is, and then we'll get right into what the configuring of auction types really means, what's available, the settings, etc. And then we'll just close with some key auction configurations that you really want to think about, and then we'll open it up for some questions. So what is an auction type? Really, an auction type is really the foundational construct in the system for auctions. It is typically something that is configured with business experts and sometimes is controlled by the system administrator. The auction type includes various parameters and controls that can be set up for the various types of auctions that you would like to run. You have to have an auction type prior to creating either an auction template or an actual auction. Honestly, most often we don't find customers creating auction templates. Usually they have an auction type that drives all the features and functions that are available, and then our customers create an auction directly from the type and not from a template. But you can create templates if you find value in that. You can have one or many auction types defined in the system. It just depends upon what parameters you want to set. And as they vary, you may need to have multiple auction types to drive the kinds of auctions that you want to do. You can create auction types at any time. So you might start with a handful that you know you want to run. We find that's very common with customers, not overcomplicate it in the beginning. But then, as they determine that there are other things they would like to do with auctions, they may go ahead and create an auction type. So you can make those decisions at any point in time. There's no reason to create all of your auction types or get bogged down with trying to think of every possible scenario that you might want to do. And then when you're creating an auction, you've got all your auction types configured, and when your users get ready to create an auction, they can pick the one that best suits the needs for the specific auction that they're planning to run. Where you find auction types, again, this is typically something that's done and controlled by a system administrator. A system administrator typically works with the knowledgeable business users, the experts that know what they want to do to create these. And very often it is a business user that has the system admin permissions, if you will, to go ahead and create these auction types. And here you just see the path to get to them. And here I've just added a screenshot so that you can see exactly where you would find this in setup. If you can't actually get to the auction types, it's because you don't have those permissions to be able to see this. So just be aware of that. So configuring an auction type. I'm going to now get into a little bit of detail around this. I'm really trying to use this session to explain what all of these various fields and parameters mean so that you can best set up your auction types to meet your particular needs. So what we're looking at right now, the screenshot is a screenshot of the general settings of an auction type. And here's where you give it a name, you give it a description, and you want to make these descriptive enough so that when you're getting ready to create an auction, you actually know what this auction is all about, maybe what the bidding format is, and things of that nature. And then in the description, maybe add a little bit more detail about what's in that auction. The order field actually orders this auction type in the way that the user will see them when they go to create an auction. So, for example, if you're ordering 1 through 10, we typically recommend leaving some space in between, so in between the numbers, so maybe 10, 20, 30, but just for this example, if you have this ordered 1 through 10 and you've got 10 auction types, what that order means is that this particular auction type will be the 10th one in the list that's presented to the user. The numbering table, you have some configuration options. Typically, we deliver the numbering table kind of format that you can use, and you can actually configure that to meet your particular needs. There are some variables that you can include if you want to. Most often, our customers have a pretty simple numbering table, but here you do define it, and you can have different numbering tables for different types of auctions. Typically, I would say that customers don't do that very often. They usually tend to keep it relatively simple, but you do have those configuration capabilities if you want. I've included some definitions of what each of the fields mean. Of course, you're going to get this presentation and the recording. So this is really more something for you to refer back to that has some additional detail and things for you to remember as a reference document. It's moving on into the bidding section of the auction type configuration. This is a pretty important section. 2 specific fields that are, I would say, pretty critical is the bidding format and the auction direction. In fact, those are the 2 that are required on this particular in this particular section. So the bidding format is really just the type of bidding that you will allow. Open bidding is typically the most commonly used bidding format among our customers. And what open bidding is the suppliers have to place a bid that is better than their own last bid, including whatever the bid decrement is that has been configured for a particular auction. So if my last bid was $100 and the bid decrement is set to $10, let's say, when I go to place my next bid, the bid has to be at least $90 or less. So $100 minus the bid decrement of $10. Another fairly commonly used format is the standard format, where you have to the suppliers have to beat the leading bid. So whomever the supplier is that has the leading bid, then you have to beat that particular bid, not your own, and also by the bid decrement, so whatever that bid decrement. So if the other suppliers, if the best bid that's in the system is $100 and that bid decrement is set to $10, it's the same concept. It's 100 minus 10, so your bid has to be 90. The auction direction is pretty important. This is determining whether you're decreasing your bids for something that you're trying to sell to a customer, or you're trying to get rid of, let's say, some obsolete inventory, excess inventory, whatever. You can also run a forward auction, which basically means that you're trying to get the best price for this obsolete inventory or equipment, whatever, that you're trying to get rid of. And so in that case, the price is increasing. For open bidding, you can disallow tying bids. So if I place a bid of $100 and another supplier tries to place a bid of $100, you can disallow that. Enabling factored cost bidding. This is where you might want to put in other cost factors that are either additive or multiplied by whatever the bid is that the supplier placed. And this might be because, for example, you might be trying to weigh an incumbent supplier against, a brand new supplier, and there are other costs that you want to include for a brand new supplier because, of course, there are always additional costs in doing business with a new supplier as opposed to somebody that's an incumbent. So you can enable those cost factors so that you can make those comparisons and really look at more of an apples-to-apples type of comparison. You can allow bids, of course, in multiple currencies. So if it's a global kind of auction, you can allow suppliers to place bids in the currency of the country that they're in, if that's more comfortable for them. You can enable comments with bids. I typically recommend to customers not to turn this on. Basically, it takes the focus off of the supplier entering their bid, and they're more focused on putting in comments and trying to explain what it is that they're doing. By the time you get to an auction, the suppliers should really be focused on providing you their bids, their best pricing, whatever, and not so much trying to qualify what they're telling you in a bid. And this, there is a chat function. I'll show you that in a moment. This has nothing to do with the chat function. This is something where if you enable those comments, with every bid, the supplier can give you, some comment, some qualifier, whatever. And then the next flag is something that actually we introduced in version 9, our latest generally available version. And basically what this is if you have a package line item, which is really kind of a lot, for example, where you have some sublines that make up that lot. So maybe you're buying a computer or you're auctioning a computer, and you have, you want pricing for the monitor, you want pricing for, storage, you want pricing for a mouse or a printer or a whole bunch of things that might make up that, that complete computer. You can break those down into sublines, but the computer is the package, if you will. And by selecting this particular box, what you're doing is you're forcing the suppliers not to play with the sublines with the parts of the computer. Because what the suppliers can do, if you don't check this, is they can just change their prices on various sublines. So the overall price of the computer doesn't really change. They're just really manipulating the prices on each of the components of the computer. So this just allows you to kind of force the suppliers to either leave the subline alone, the components of the computer alone with the price that they gave previously, and maybe reduce their price on some part of the computer where they have a little bit more room to do that without really playing games, I guess. It's probably the most straightforward way to say it. And this slide just really provides all the details around each of the bidding formats. So again, open bidding is the most common Standard bidding is one that is not used all that often, but it's probably the next most common. Any price bidding is almost never used because the suppliers can do just about anything that they want. They can go up, they can go down, and it doesn't really make a lot of sense. In most cases, there may be times, obviously we have it in the system, so there may be times when that makes sense for you, but most often it does not. Dutch bidding is something that we introduced, I believe, in version 7, and it's something that you, a type that you would use or a format that you would use typically when the demand is greater than the supply. So you know, lots of demand and little supply, and that typically works really well. The example we like to use to explain this is, you know, I'm sure you've been in an airport when there weren't enough seats, they oversold, and they're trying to get somebody to step up and be willing to go on a later flight or whatever, and they continually increase the incentive, if you will, to do that. So that's Dutch bidding. And then proxy bidding is almost, honestly, I've been working with this product for about 11 years, and I don't know of any time that this one has been used. But it is a format that basically each bidder places a best offer bid, and then the system evaluates the bids and places incremental bids on behalf of the suppliers until you get to the reserve price. So again, it's not used that often. I talked about the reverse auction and forward auction, what they mean. It's the direction of the pricing, whether it's increasing or decreasing. Again, reverse auctions usually used when you're trying to buy something from suppliers. The forward auction is typically used when you're trying to get the best price, if you will, for the highest price, I should say, for something that you're trying to divest yourself of, like obsolete inventory and excess equipment, things like that. We talked about all these. These are just some detailed definitions that you can refer back to on the bidding settings. In the features section of the auction type configuration, there are a number of settings, and I would say the most important here is the phase configuration. And what you're doing here is determining what phases you will allow for the suppliers. Open is a required phase because it is during the open phase that the competitive bidding is occurring. There's also an option to allow the suppliers to either preview the auction or to place a pre-bid. Usually one or the other are used. You can use both if you want to. And really all that does is allow the suppliers to come in and poke around and get comfortable with what's there. If you allow them to preview, if you allow them to do a pre-bid, then they're able to place a bid and just get the feel of what it's like to participate in an auction, and in this particular auction, without the pressure, if you will, of competing, the competition that will occur as soon as it goes into open. There is another phase, it's called the close pending phase, that we strongly recommend that you use. And the reason for that is the close pending phase basically gives you the opportunity to reopen the auction if there are any problems whatsoever. And if you've ever, run an auction, or if you're running auctions, from time to time you do have, suppliers coming back and complaining that they had some technical difficulties or they didn't understand or whatever. The close pending phase gives you the opportunity to open that auction back up if you determine that the suppliers have, or a supplier has, a legitimate concern, and allow them to complete the auction along with others. So with the other suppliers. So it's opened up to everybody, but it does give you that opportunity. I have been involved and supported auctions where, for whatever reason, the customer chose not to include the closed pending phase, and it created issues for them because then the only option that you have is to do a brand new auction. And this closed pending phase allows you to start from where you were, where you ended. So just something that can be very useful for you. Oops, I should go back here. So another thing that's important here is enabling the chat. So the chat function allows you to communicate with the suppliers during the auction, you with them and the individual suppliers with you. You know, if there's something you want to communicate, if you want to, you know, remind them that they've got, 5 minutes left or whatever it is that you want to tell them. It is heavily used, so we do recommend that you turn that on. Once in a while we see customers not have that turned on, but it limits your ability to communicate with the suppliers and have them see that communication in real time. And it also limits them from communicating with you. So again, just more detail here on each of the parameters that are available, each of the fields that you can enable or not enable based on, the particular auction that you're trying to run. And this just gets into more detail on each of the phase configurations, what they mean, so that, again, you have something to come back and refer to. And again, the best practice is to include either a preview or a pre-bid phase as well as the closed pending phase. This is the ability to turn on the formulas if you're going to use formula-based pricing in an auction. And in order to use formulas, you want to turn on the line item specifications and supplier entered attributes that you will use to make up those formulas. So, and that's also in that section of the features settings. Coming down now to the rules section, this also has a number of different parameters that need to be set, but I would say that the most critical one is the enabling of the automatic early close. So in this case, what this particular field does is open up time extensions. So you're in the auction, and you want to allow time extensions when there's a lot of bidding activity, you're getting close to the end of the auction, somebody places a bid, you want the other suppliers to have the opportunity to react to those bids. It's really important that you turn this flag on. Our name for it probably isn't the best. I'll be the first one to admit that because a lot of times folks don't understand, and I just actually dealt with this issue yesterday. A lot of times folks do not understand that it is only by turning this flag on that the time extensions will be enabled, and I've got another screenshot that will show you this. So really a critical parameter to be turned on. So if we look at the Schedule tab, what you see here is as soon as you enable that flag that we were just looking at on the auction type, from the auction type you create an auction. On the Schedule tab, you'll see that this early close section is opened up, and there are two fields, the inactivity period and the extension, and these are both defined in terms of minutes. And what this does is when you get, in the way that this is configured in this case, it's telling us that if you get 5 minutes within the close of the auction and a supplier comes in and places a bid, at that time, then the system will automatically add an additional 5 minutes so that the other suppliers can react to that bid and place their best bid as well. And so a lot of times that's when you see in an auction, you'll see a huge amount of activity is towards the end where everybody's trying to get their best bids in. Typically when I work with a customer, I will recommend that they tell the suppliers, train the suppliers, and help them understand that, waiting till the very last second to place bids is not always the best strategy in case, there's any kind of a problem, the auction comes to an end, and they haven't been able to place their best bid. The way that this works, I'm seeing some questions in the chat here, so I'll just answer that because it is actually a very important question. There are two fields, the line item minimum bid duration field and the auction bid duration field. The line item minimum bid duration field is the minimum length of time that the line items will be open for bidding. So no matter what happens, if I say I want this to be, I've got some crazy times in here when I was creating this example, but let's say I don't want the auction to close in less than 30 minutes. I would put 30 minutes here, and for those 30 minutes, the auction will remain open, and whether there's bidding or not, it'll just stay open and the suppliers can place a bid at any time. The auction bid duration is the maximum amount of time that the auction will stay open. In between the maximum and the minimum, so let's say the maximum is 60 minutes. So the minimum is 30, the maximum is 60. In that 30-minute period, in the difference, is when time extensions can be enabled. So let's say this is open for 30 minutes and I get to the 28th minute and I'm a supplier, I place a bid. What the system is going to do is it's automatically going to add an additional 5 minutes. Again, based on the configuration. Those numbers could be whatever you want them to be. They could be, 5 minutes and 2. They could be 2 and 2. It's, they could be 10 and 10. It's whatever the right configuration for that particular auction that you're doing. So that is also something that is very often not very well understood. So the difference between the minimum and the maximum, again, the auction bid duration is the maximum, is the opportunity, if you will, for auction extensions to be added, and they're added based on activity. So the supplier places a bid, it causes a time extension. We get again to the end of 5 minutes. Again, in this particular configuration, we get into that 5-minute time period, and I place another bid. Again, another 5 minutes will be added, and it will keep doing that until you get to the maximum duration of that auction. Once you hit the maximum duration, the auction will close. And maybe one other important point that I should make here is that if you're seeing a lot of bid activity and it's continuing, it's not slowing down, and you're getting concerned that the auction is going to close, that maybe you didn't allow enough time, you can change the schedule and add additional time so that the bidding activity can continue. One of the future events that we're planning to do is actually an event around managing an auction and all of the different things that you can do at that point. So I took a little bit of a long time on this particular topic, but it is because it's one that has, we've had lots and lots of questions around, and again, I just spent a bunch of time on this yesterday. Okay, sorry, I was starting to move on here. Yeah, this is just a screenshot in, again, the actual auction, the schedule tab, and just highlights, these key fields. Somebody's asking in the chat if that means manually altering the time. Yes, it does. So basically, when you can, there's a function, manage auction, you can go in there and add additional time if you need to. But you are, physically thinking about that and going in and making that change. You can also, just a few other settings that maybe I'll call out here that are probably important. The enable staggered start or end times for line items. Basically what this is allowing you to do, if you've got a lot of line items and you don't want them all opening at the same time because you want the suppliers to focus on, one line item at a time type of thing, you can enable this particular field, and then you can tell the system by how much you want to stagger it, and you can stagger the start of each of the line items, you can stagger the end of each of the line items, or you can stagger both. It just depends on, again, what makes sense for you and the particular auction that you're running. Okay, so moving on, again, that previous screen just has a lot of additional detail in it around what each of the parameters mean, and it's really there for your reference. Into the disclosure section, so here is where you're determining whether you're going to display the rank, and you can display just the rank, or you can display the rank and the number of suppliers that are participating and what the rank is among those suppliers. I would say that displaying the rank is probably the most common disclosure that is done. You can also disclose the leading bid if you and you can do both. It's rare that people do both the rank and the leading bid. And again, it depends on a lot of different attributes associated with the auction itself, like how many suppliers are bidding. Do you have 2 suppliers, or do you have 50 suppliers? In what your choices are in terms of what you're displaying for rank or leading bid, and if you're displaying the number of participants and what the rank is in relationship to that number of participants. I almost never see that used, but I suppose there could be some use cases where it would make sense. The bid history is really important selection. Most often, you're going to want to have a sealed bid history. If you use public, and in some of our public sector customers, this is where the public bid history rule is most often used. But typically, you want it to be sealed. And what this means is that if you set this to public, let's say, all of the suppliers are able to see all of the bid history from all the suppliers. So, I bid $2 and you bid $3 and somebody else bid $1. All of that history is available if you use the public bid history flag. Sealed means that they can see their own and not see anybody else's. And where you'll see this is, I believe it's called the full bid report. In the full bid report, if this flag is set to public, they'll see everything. If it's set to sealed, they'll see only their own. You can also set this to require a bid before allowing the suppliers to view anything. So the purpose of this particular flag is you invite a supplier and they accept, and they really only come in to kind of see what's happening in the market. They're really not so interested in participating in the auction or placing bids or whatever. This allows you to force them to place a bid before they can view anything about the auction. So they can come into the auction, but they actually can't see anything at all until they actually place a bid. So I would say that most often that flag is turned on just to support the right behavior, if you will, or to kind of drive the right behavior in supplier participation. And then the supplier's factored cost bidding is just making that visible to the suppliers. We talked earlier about factored costs and actually turning that on. This just allows you to show the suppliers what that impact is if you so choose. And this just gets into more of the detail of each one. Again, the definitions that you have to refer back to when you get this this presentation. So just in the supplier rank, just to you can choose not to show any rank information at all. You can choose to display only the rank, or you can choose to display the rank in relationship to the number of participants, which is what we just talked about on the previous slide. And again, this is just more definition on the fields that we've already talked about. So just, to reinforce a few of the key parameters. So again, if you're trying to buy from suppliers at the best price, you're typically going to be setting a reverse auction, and the prices are generally decreasing. If you're trying to sell excess inventory, obsolete equipment, or anything else, you want to get the best price for that, and the price is usually increasing, and that's why it's called a forward auction. The bidding formats, again, really important. The open bidding is the one that's most commonly used, with, I would say, standard bidding following, and Dutch bidding we're seeing more and more coming into play as it just becomes a more common bidding format. This actually started with our European customers having an interest in this, and now we're seeing it pop up more and more here in the U.S. Phase configuration, again, not to belabor the point, but it is really important to understand why you would include a close pending and why you might include a preview or a pre-bid. So again, the preview of the pre-bid is to allow the suppliers to get a little bit comfortable with what they're doing. You obviously need suppliers to have a successful auction. If you don't have people participating, then something isn't right and you're not going to get the results that you expect. The close pending gives you a little bit of leeway. It doesn't force you to do anything, but it does give you a little bit of leeway in order to open it up again should a problem have been identified. So there's a question of forward auction. The open bidding requires higher bids. Yes, exactly. It depends on the configuration that is set, but yes, exactly. So you're really driving for higher bids and not lower bids. So it's just the reverse of what we've talked about in uh, in the reverse auctions. It's the opposite. You're trying to achieve something a little bit different with the forward auction in that you're trying to get the most money for the things you're trying to get rid of, basically. And in the reverse auction, you're trying to buy the best quality at the best price, lowest price, to be clear. We talked about the disclosure rules again. Here, probably the most critical thing to remember is that if you do not want suppliers to see everybody else's bid history, you really want to choose the sealed. That's something that very often, for whatever reason, folks don't realize, and so it's just important for you to know. And again, the other important controls, disenable automatic early close is what drives the time extensions. I've got it in red because it's been a problem where folks haven't recognized what the purpose is of that particular field, that parameter. So you want to, I can't think of a time when you would not want to have that set. So you always want to turn that on. And that really concludes the formal part of the presentation. I've been trying to answer questions as I see them popping up here in the chat. I see a few others coming up. Japanese auction type is something that we're considering actually for version 11. That is not supported today. What is the difference between Dutch and forward bidding? The forward auction type is typically used when you're trying to get rid of excess inventory or something along those lines. The Dutch auction is used in the example that I gave where the demand is high and the supply is low. I don't see other questions in the chat that we haven't already answered. Travis, I think maybe we can open up the phone lines and see if folks have questions.
Certainly. If you would like to ask a question, please signal by pressing star 1 on your telephone keypad. If you are using a speakerphone, please make sure your mute function is turned off to allow your signal to reach our equipment. A voice prompt on the phone line will indicate when your line is open. Please state your name before posing your question. Again, press star 1 to ask a question. And we'll pause for just a moment to allow everyone an opportunity to signal for questions. And once again, that is star 1 if you would like to ask a question today. And we'll take our first question.
Hi, this is Keith Forrester. I have a question about the forward auctions and factored cost bidding. Is this an example of where if we have, say, a truckload of product that we're doing a forward auction for, but one of the considerations is to one supplier, they're further away, so our freight is going to be higher. Is putting that freight in as a factored cost something that's likely in that kind of situation?
Sure, that's probably a good example of how you might use that.
And then if you turn...
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and then if you turn on their ability to see that during the auction, they see that it's their price plus that freight, which might make them higher or lower.
Yep, exactly.
Thank you.
And once again, if you would like to ask a question, that is star 1 on your telephone keypad. It appears there are no further questions in the queue at this time.
Great, Travis. So I think, thank you, everybody. We will be getting into some specific areas in future sessions that it probably require the hour to get into it. We are actually working on what those sessions will be around auctions and, of course, around other topics as well. I thank you for your time and attention, and look forward to the next one.
That concludes today's presentation. Thank you for your participation.